Well, good afternoon. We're really excited to be in Doral. We have a number of Venezuelan Americans who, like many Americans, and I know a lot of Floridians, are very angered by the Biden administration's recent attempt to legitimize the brutal Maduro regime in Venezuela. And this is something that is unfortunately become part of a pattern with the Biden administration. I think if you look at people throughout South Florida that have connections in different countries in the Western Hemisphere, what we see from the Biden administration is basically thumbing their nose at millions of people here in our state when they take FARC off the list in Colombia. When they sit idly by, they don't lift a finger to help the democracy protesters in Cuba who were fighting against that decades-long dictatorship. And now to go in hat in hand and legitimizing Nicolas Maduro, who's been responsible for a lot of atrocities and has driven that country into the ground, along with, of course, his predecessor, Hugo Chavez. So we are here to speak out about that. I believe that this country should be energy independent. We have a huge amount of energy reserves in this country. You look at how these gas prices are impacting consumers in Florida and throughout the country. It wasn't just because of the Russia. They've been going up consistently since January 20th, 2021. That's just a fact. And so now we're in a situation where I just saw $4.30 a gallon for unleaded, and it's continuing to go up. We could end up $5, $6 a gas before you even know it, and it could even get much higher than that. And we got folks that have to go to work. They've got to take their kids to school. They can't just walk. I mean, especially in Miami, a lot of people have to commute. So this is a huge, huge blow to a lot of people and their family budgets. And part of the reason we're in this situation is because the Biden administration has had a policy of really kneecapping the American energy industry. This is based on ideology. They don't want us producing like we did under the Trump administration. So they've done a series of things like stop Keystone. They're closing Anwar. They're not allowing permits for production on federal lands. There's all these different things that not only have had an effect on what would be done in those instances, but also I think a general chilling effect where people know this is not an administration that's energy friendly. So now we're in a situation where people are really, really hurting. And rather than just recognize that, rather than acknowledge that their policies have been ineffective, they are trying to justify what they're doing to say no more in America. And they're going to Maduro. They're going potentially to the Ayatollah in Iran. So you say you don't want to do with Putin because he's a dictator. Fine, I'm all for that. But then don't turn around and go to Maduro, who has committed all kinds of atrocities. So needless to say, we've got a lot to discuss. So I'm really happy to be joined here by Florida's Lieutenant Governor, Jeanette Nunez. The congressman from this area, my friend Mario Diaz-Balart. Ernesto Ackerman, the president of Independent Venezuelan American Citizens. Lorenzo Di Stefano, owner of El Arapazzo Restaurant. Rafael Gottinger, he's the president of the Venezuelan American Medical Association. He actually just came from surgery, so thank you for being here. Carines Moncada, Venezuelan radio journalist. Thank you. Juan Fernandez, founder of Gente de Petróleo. And Leslie Simon, president of the Venezuelan American Chamber of Commerce. So we all know the destruction that we've seen in Venezuela at the hands of both Chavez and Maduro, and this is what leftist authoritarianism does to a society and does to a country. And what we've seen over many, many years has been an absolute disgrace, and we've had people all throughout our country recognize, but particularly here in Miami-Dade County, recognize that this Maduro regime is not a regime that you legitimize. It's not a regime that you prop up. It's a regime that we want to see driven from Venezuela and driven from power. What the Biden administration's doing is really turning back the clock prior to the Trump administration's policy, which sought to isolate Maduro. And they're now in a position where they're doing these back channels, which is going to legitimize Maduro. And that's a mistake, and it's not something that is necessary to be able to meet America's energy needs. And so the policies that we've seen in Venezuela have been incredibly destructive. I think prior to Biden taking office, under the Trump administration's policies, the Maduro regime really was a pariah on the world stage. We had a lot of engagement to try to help the opposition. Of course, that didn't pan out quite as much as we hoped. There was a time when we thought there may be imminent change, and it just didn't get there. But the Trump administration was willing to sanction officials in the Maduro regime. They were willing to go after the lifeblood, the oil industry that really props Maduro up. Now we're in a situation, as I mentioned, where you have a totally different energy policy. We were the world's leading producer, energy independent. We didn't need to rely on these countries to the extent we are now, given the increase in energy prices. And so they're trying to figure out an easy way out of this. And rather than just unleash American production, they are thinking going to Iran and going to Venezuela. The increased energy prices, it's not just reflected at the gas pump. All these different industries rely on energy. So what you see in the grocery store, the skyrocketing prices, that is also partially as a result of higher energy prices. You look at all the bills that you pay, all this stuff, and there's other factors too, but the energy is really doing a lot. There's also a lot of inflation because of printing trillions and trillions of dollars in Washington, D.C. You can't do that infinitum and not have some serious response. And so we're seeing that now with 8% inflation, the highest inflation in 40 years. You have people that have jobs, they're even doing better in terms of higher income, and then the inflation just comes and it's like a huge tax, and people can't get ahead when that happens. So it's a huge, huge problem, and they're not doing what is necessary to address it in total, but certainly on this energy, huge opportunities for us to really unleash American production. It's interesting. There's a San Francisco-based NGO, Global Energy Monitor, which they're opposed to American energy development. They're celebrating that $244 billion in American liquefied natural gas projects are unable to move forward because lenders are afraid to invest because of the regulatory climate that we see in the United States. So I think it's a bad thing if we have energy that could be cheaper and more affordable for people, that's being kept on the sidelines because of the policies that we see in Washington, D.C. So if you look at what's going on with Russia and Ukraine, hitting Putin in energy, some of the other things they're doing where it's like if you're a Russian citizen living abroad, you can't use a credit card. I don't know how that's hurting Putin. The only way to really deal with Putin is to take away his lifeblood, which is the energy revenue. The problem is most of that is going to Europe. A lot of those countries are not in any position to be energy independent at all. We could help fill some of that, I think. But a lot of them over many years have helped to empower Putin with their policies. They have not taken energy security seriously. They haven't taken their defense commitments, quite frankly, seriously. And so now we're in a situation where Putin's been able to flex a lot of muscle, although I think he's miscalculated the resistance that he's faced, and I don't think it's going to end well for him. But you hit him with the energy, then what do you do in the United States to make sure that people just aren't paying more than they already are? The answer is American energy independence. Biden's answer Biden's answer is to prop up Nicolas Maduro. So we're saying here today, no, we do not accept the fact that you are legitimizing a murderous tyrant, and we stand with the people in Venezuela who are seeking freedom, and we stand with the people in South Florida who want to see a free Venezuela.